Hello everyone and welcome to my Osage life. I wanted to do a video today on applique beadwork since I'm doing some work for the girls to get them ready for the June dances. But once again, Osage politics has interfered, and so today we're doing a video on Osage politics. A few days ago, the Osage News and the Big Heart Times both ran stories on a Commerce and Economic Development Committee meeting held in the Osage Nation Congressional Chambers. Now, I have to tell you that I listened to that meeting live on the internet as it was happening because I had a feeling that there would be more than just everyday reports in that meeting, and I was right. So what's hot in Osage politics today? The Osage Nation Energy Services LLC board and a contract between Chief Red Eagle and Rod Hartness. During the meeting, the issue of a letter came up, a letter written by the ONES board to Chief Red Eagle. That letter accused Chief Red Eagle of interfering with Osage business. So what happened is that Chief Red Eagle hired a consultant, Rod Hartness, which is allowed under Osage law. What's not allowed is that Mr. Hartness and the chief's brother, Councilman Myron Red Eagle, then went out and contacted businesses that had established relationships with the ONES board and presented themselves as representatives of the board, as well as the primary contacts for that board. That's the part where it gets dicey. The letter went on to quote Osage law and the Osage Constitution, which made it pretty clear that Osage law had been violated. Finally, the letter said that if these activities continue, that the board would seek relief through Osage Nation Attorney General Jeff Jones and our tribal courts. The part that I really take issue with is this blatant disregard of Osage law. The chief and our elected officials are supposed to be setting the example that the rest of us follow. If they don't follow Osage law, why should the citizens or anyone else be subject to it? If they don't take our government seriously, we can't expect our own people or other governments to take our government seriously. I've said this before. We're not playing government. We are a government. We provide very needed services to our people. This is something that has to be taken care of. The chief was given an opportunity to answer these charges, and so when he got up to speak, he was fairly defiant in his attitude. He basically told the Congress that he can hire as many consultants as he wants to because he has executive privilege. This kind of attitude we've seen before with Chief Red Eagle. Early on in his term, during budget proceedings, the chief's communications officer approached the Congress and basically said the chief has a mandate of the people, so he can do whatever he wants. I believe that when most Osages marked their ballot for chief, whether it was for this chief or any of the other candidates, that they didn't think, man, if this guy gets in, he can do whatever he wants to do with the Osage Nation and its resources. I just don't think that's the case. Now, I have to say that Congresswoman Alice Buffalohead really got to the heart of the matter and spoke frankly. She didn't leave any room for interpretation on how she felt about this matter. And that I have to give her a pat on the back for, because it's very rare with politicians that happens, and it's a quality that I admire. Congresswoman Buffalohead said that early on in the stages of discussing this new LLC, that she was initially opposed to the idea because she feared the involvement of Mr. Hartness. She even went so far as to say that she went to the executive offices and spoke to Mr. Hartness's wife, who is employed by Chief Red Eagle, and asked at that time, is he going to be involved? And she was assured that he wouldn't be. And knowing that it was a good idea for the nation to get involved in the energy industry, she went ahead and voted yes on the formation of this LLC. She also asked about Councilman Red Eagle's involvement in all of this. As an elected official, he, more than Rod Hartness, is to stay away from Osage business. At that point, the chief said that Myron can speak for himself. He just hung him out to dry all alone. And he certainly didn't defend Myron like he defended Rod Hartness. So Councilman Red Eagle got up. He answered several questions that the members of Congress had. And when he was finished, Minerals Councilman Sonny Abbott stood and spoke to the Congress and said that he had been sent to the congressional chambers by Minerals Council Chair Galen Crum to inform the Congress that Myron Red Eagle was acting alone, that he was not acting on behalf of the Minerals Council. They had nothing to do with this. I think a subject that hasn't fully been approached by the members of Congress is that the LLCs were formed for a reason. They insulate the nation and its assets in case anything goes wrong in a business deal. The way it works is that if anything goes wrong, only that LLC and its assets can be attacked legally. But with the chief sending out a consultant that's hired by him and paid by the executive branch to go out on behalf of the chief and start structuring these business deals, it leaves the tribe wide open. It leaves us vulnerable. It leaves our assets vulnerable because legally those things can be attacked at that point. During government reform, when the Constitution was being written, there were a few reasons why we wanted this big space between business and politics. One was to insulate the nation and its assets, but another was to prevent politicians from making business decisions. Because when they have to choose between doing good business and getting votes, it's not always clear which way they will decide. The temptation is fairly great to do what your voters want you to do, even if it's bad business, so that you can keep getting reelected. This is why it's so important that we keep that line very, very clear. So what's going to happen next? We're just going to have to wait and see. What we do know is the day after this meeting, the day after Congress presented a united front in their disappointment in this blurring of the lines between business and politics, Chief Red Eagle turned around and appointed his other brother, Eddie Red Eagle, former congressman, to fill the last spot at the ONES board.